thank you to everyone so far who has joined us. We have a handful of questions that people asked ahead of time. We'll probably look at those in a few minutes. We have some cool stuff to show you. We have a lot more cool stuff we can't show you always. And if you have any questions at all, put them in the comments. We'll do our best to address them. And yeah, anybody in there we know?
Yeah, we got a few people in there. We have about 17, 18 people showing up.
Oh, goodness.
So.
All right.
And we have a very important question from Ted, so I think we should address this. What is your favorite color?
Ooh. 1970s Kermit the Frog green.
Good one.
And it's like that 70s one. And I don't know if the puppet was really that color in the 70s, or it's just the way that, film and video and stuff caught stuff in the 70s, but he's not as lime green and fresh as the new ones look today. It's like a little more, like they mix a little bit of avocado green in there or something like that. But yeah, there you go, if you must know. If the next question is the last four of my social and my mother's maiden name, we're not answering that.
I already gave that to them. So.
Oh, perfect. Excellent.
Yeah, no, we're no real questions yet, so maybe we can just start and we'll shuffle them in.
So what do we have from people that left questions on the
prior
things?
We have someone from Instagram is asking how many Maquette artists were there and who are they?
Okay, so they're talking about the Return of the Jedi Maquettes, things like Weequay here and Max Rebo and the Bib Fortuna, which we showed at Star Wars Celebration, which is still coming soon, and the Jabba the Hutt, which we sold out last year. These were all created as part of the process for designing the creatures for Return of the Jedi, which I can't believe next year is 40 years since the release of the movie. So that's over 40 years since they were doing this stuff, because they were doing this in 81 and 82, I believe. But it was a wide range of people that were doing them. Phil Tippett was head of department. Chris Wayless was actually head of the original head of the department. It was going to be, I believe, Phil and Chris running it. And Chris wound up leaving to do, certainly Gremlins. I don't know if there was anything else in between there, but I think Gremlins was the big one. So you have quite a few designs from Chris and Phil. Apparently talking with Ken Ralston, which if you go to our YouTube page, which is just Regal Robot, if you go to YouTube and search that, there's a couple of good videos with Ken Ralston talking about the process and how great it was at ILM that the higher-ups just came to everybody and said, hey, why don't you all take a shot at sculpting a bunch of little monsters? They found that George really responded to three-dimensional stuff rather than sketches, and it was a lot easier to get his approval that way. So a bunch of people got to do this stuff. You have, let's see here, Chris Wayless, Phil Tippett, Ken Ralston, Joe Johnston made one, possibly more. Judy Elkins made a few. Kirk Thatcher made a few. Dave Carson made a few. Wesley Seeds, the late Wesley Seeds, definitely did at least one. Dan Howard is thought to have done a couple of them. He also passed away, though. Am I missing someone? Tom Sanamond did a few. That's off the top of my head. There may be one or two that I'm missing, but I think that's everybody. We've been going through a ton of research figuring out who did what. It's something that surprisingly there's not a lot of information about. There's pictures of these things. You look at the the Star Wars Chronicles has pictures of almost all of them. You have a ton of photos of them in the from Star Wars and Indiana Jones, the Best of the Lucasfilm Archives book. There's photos of them in some of the art of books and in the making of books that Rinsler did, John Rinsler. But there's not a ton of information about who did what. So what we've been doing is going back to the source, and everybody that we talk to that worked on the movie, and find out, hey, did you do any of these? Do you know who did some of these? And through that process, we've really narrowed down a ton of them, and it's been a really cool, fun process figuring all that stuff out.
All right. From John, he says, are all the upcoming maquettes going to be signature editions?
That's A good question, John. So initially, Max Rebo was going to be the only signature edition, but the reaction was so good there, and everybody at Star Wars Celebration was asking us, you know, hey, is the Tuscan Raider going to be a signature edition? Hey, are the Gaffy sticks going to be a signature edition? Hey, you know, are the next Maquettes? So we put our butts in gear on that, and now the goal will be to make as many of them as possible signature editions. You know, in cases where the original sculptor has passed away, we're looking at other options, other people who maybe worked on the full-size character, but still keeping it on the maker side. Yeah, I would expect most of the maquettes to have a signature element.
All right, sticking with the 40th anniversary, Parminder is asking, do we have any plans on releasing something specific for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi next year?
Maybe.
Still figuring
we have a few things. We have a few things on the board which no one gets to see, which I'm always looking at when we talk about these things. We have a few things up there. We have quite a few Return of the Jedi maquettes lined up, and quite a few of them that are actually pretty far along in development. There's a bunch where we've already gotten signatures. There's at least 2 that we are done with all of the digital work and have had some prototypes printed and are working on that portion of it. There's another that is kind of midway through that process. And then quite a few that we have scanned and are waiting to put through the rest of the process. I think there's a few things on the board that we may make, you know, sort of special for the 40th, and we're trying to think of a few things that maybe could be unique for the 40th and a little outside of the kind of norm, maybe a little more niche than normal, which I mean is saying something for us. But yeah, good question. Stay tuned.
Jason says, hey, Tom and Rob, just wanted to say hello and express my excitement for this line. So
hello.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
All right,
we're excited too, in case you can't tell.
So Rick is asking, if I have the Signature Edition Max, can I get a matching number for this new guy?
So, if you have, if anybody's ever ordering anything that's a numbered edition, the way that we usually handle those is once you place the order, send us an email immediately after, just to the info@regalrobot.com address, and say that you'd like to request a number. And as long as the number you're requesting is equal to or higher than the number you would naturally have gotten at the time you placed the order, we can honor that request. If you're looking for a number, but technically you came in past the point where that number was already allocated, unfortunately we can't do that. Basically, as the orders come in, sometimes down to the millisecond, that is how the numbers get doled out. I will say on anything where there's a numbered edition, and really any of the bigger collectible stuff where people are waiting to buy when that thing goes live, it's a very sliding scale over time from when those purchases come in. You have the first 20 seconds or so is bonkers. And most of your orders for any kind of large edition, you know, something like the Salacious Crumb that took about 2 days to sell out, if I'm remembering right, most of those sold in the first 30 seconds. It's really impressive. And I would say it goes like the first 30 seconds, then the first 10 minutes, then probably the first hour. And then after that, it's a very, very different sort of pattern of orders coming in. So if you do want to make a request, I would just say, you know, get ready tomorrow noon Eastern. That's when these are going to go live, and just try and get your order in as early as humanly possible, and then just email us with the request. And if the request isn't immediately after, you're fine, because at least we still know when your order came in, and we'll still try and honor the request if we can. There's been one or two. Really, the only thing where we haven't honored any of those was the multi-packs of the 2 packs of the chess pieces, because they were produced to order, and the way that those orders were coming in, we didn't always know how many of each there were going to be because it was a timed edition. But otherwise, going forward, yes, if anyone wants to make that kind of request, get your order in as early as possible, and then make your request, and we'll see what we can do.
Brandon is just quoting you and saying, more niche than normal. I like that.
Well,
Robert,
you know.
you're not wrong. Robert's got a good question, I think, that, Tom, you can shed some good light on. Of all the maquettes, was the Rancor the largest of them, or is there a larger maquette than the Rancor? Need to plan out my display space.
So, now, if you're talking the Rancor maquette or the Rancor one-to-one prop replica, which is a replica of the prop, the puppet, those are two different things. And maybe he'll jump in on the questions while I answer this in the longest way possible. But so there is the one-to-one prop replica we did that's about 18, 20 inches tall. That is based on the hand prop, the hand puppet that Phil Tippett did, who very kindly said that it looks just like the one I did, except it doesn't have a hole in his butt for my hand. You gotta love when Phil gives you kudos like that. So compared to that version, there's probably very few of the maquettes that are going to take up that kind of room. There is a maquette of the Rancor that I would say is about half scale to the puppet. It's about 9 or 10 inches tall. It's really cool. It's a challenging one. It's one we're looking at, but it's one of these ones where there's so much going on, and there's a lot of paint on it, and it's just we've got to figure out how that could fit into what we're doing and not throw off the bell curve of pricing on these either. But I do think there are. So if in fact it was Rob that was asking this.
This was Robert. Yep.
Yeah. So if in fact, Robert, you're asking about that smaller maquette of the Rancor, there are definitely ones that are bigger than that. That said, some of the ones that are bigger than that might not be ones that we necessarily do. I would love, I think Rob too, I would love to do all of these.
Oh, yeah.
At some point, there's going to have to be some give and take, though, because some of them are extremely obscure. Some of them are things that never got made, but are still weird and cool. And then some of them are things that got made, but are maybe really challenging from a reproduction standpoint.
Robert is replying. He's saying he was referring to the studio scale that we already put out.
Okay. So no, all of these maquettes. So I would say most of the stuff that's on the board right now are in the family of Max and Weequay here.
Definitely.
Max Rebo, which is available now on the website, numbered edition of 250 pieces. I believe about 155 or so have sold so far. So get your orders in, folks. And Weequay, which goes up for sale tomorrow, noon Eastern. Both a numbered edition and a Ken Ralston signature edition. Multi-Oscar award-winning Ken Ralston, which I'm glad I didn't continue to think about while I was doing my interview with him. Otherwise, I would have been like,
Robert says, do them all.
I really would love
to. Justin saying the Rancor is a must. Been waiting for that to be announced. Maquette.
Yeah, I would love to. I think we'll, if we do that one, which we would love to, I think it is a good thing to have a little bit of air between that and the other Rancor we did, just so it doesn't cloud, anybody who's a more casual fan who doesn't realize what they're looking at. But yeah, we've got a little bit to figure out on that one. What is nice is there are plenty of these that we have figured out, and there's plenty of these that are ready to go. And yeah, we have done so much research on these already, and it's just I'm like Robert, do them all. Let's.
All right, we have Perminda says, I really enjoyed the interview with Ken. Do you plan on doing more interviews with other ILM legends?
Thank you. I will do as many as the ILM legends will allow. There is one, so if anybody hasn't seen this one yet, go to the Regal Robot YouTube page and look for my interview with Phil Tippett, Dennis Murin, and John Berg, who are definitely ILM legends. And that was all about the Holo Chess set. You can also, so for each of these, the Ken Ralston interview and the Dennis, Phil, and John interview, you can go to the Tom Spina Designs YouTube page. And what we've done there is, because Regal is licensed with Star Wars, we've got to stay a bit more focused. But on my Tom Spina Designs page, you can go and see the full interview with these, where we talk about a lot more of their history, a lot more of their early work, stuff like, for anybody who's really in the know, Cascade Studios, which was an old commercial and television production house that used to do a lot of stop motion. So many of these guys got their start there and ran into each other there and met there. You know, there's a lot of things in Star Wars that would have never happened if not for Phil Kellison and Cascade. If you're into that kind of stuff, find the longer version. They're usually, you know, on the Regal site we have, I think there's like about a half-hour version that's with just Ken talking about Star Wars, and then there's a full hour of, you know, me and Ken yammering on about all kinds of stuff. And if you enjoy the Star Wars part of it, look up the rest of it, because you may, you know, throw it on in the background while you're doing other stuff. I think it'll be a good listen, and I'm glad that folks like it. So, the question was, do we plan on doing more? Yes. Yes, we actually have already recorded one, and that'll be coming out later this month, along with our Gaffy Stick release. And we have plans for several more after that, so fingers crossed.
All right, Jason says, love the Ken Ralston signature. Don't think I've seen anything else with his signature to date.
Yeah,
it's a great signature.
It is a great signature too. Can you come in and get that?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna grab just a stand to put it against.
Nope, up here.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Hopefully I don't have like the lunch shakes here. Oh gosh.
Yeah, no, that's a neat signature.
Yeah, it really is nice. One of the things I like is, as we're doing more of these, we're getting to see how each of these artists addresses the signature, and how they each, you know, their own personal sort of style that comes in on it. I swear Ken's has almost a Walt Disney vibe to it. It's a really nice signature. And what was cool is, you know, Ken, like a lot of these people, look back really fondly on their time on these movies and count themselves as fortunate just to have been a part of it. And they remember interesting little things that you would think would get lost along the way. If you haven't checked out that video yet, you know, for all those that did, thank you, and I'm so glad people liked it. I had so much fun putting that together, and I'm really just, it's really nice that people are enjoying that, and I hope that we can keep doing some more of that. But if you haven't seen it, go to our YouTube page, go to YouTube, search Regal Robot, or search Tom Spina Designs if you've got a lot of spare time and want to watch the long version. And check him out. The Ken is a really engaging, fun guy. A lot of self-deprecation. He even laughed at me at one point, but that's all right. I'll get over it. It was a lot of fun putting that together.
All right. Justin's asking, will there be any more from Tony McVeigh, possibly a signature edition?
Nothing planned right now. You never know. It might be something we look at. Personally, I absolutely love Tony's work. I think he's done some, you know, obviously Salacious Crumb is a big one. I should give people a Salacious Crumb update too while I'm thinking of it. But he also did a lot of fabrication on Return of the Jedi, worked on a whole bunch of stuff, and on the newer shows, on things like The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, etc. He's been doing a lot of concept work. So, you know, maybe there's a chance for some other stuff there if people are interested, and if Lucasfilm is interested. You know, so speaking of Salacious, they are continuing to pump these out pump is probably not the word, but they're going out at about 12 at a time is how we're doing them. And what we find is that's the magic number. That's the perfect number for them to get, you know, really even paint before things start getting too crazy. You know, I don't like to put 100 things in front of someone and say, okay, paint these all the same, because by the time somebody gets to the 100th, there's going to be some variation. And so doing them about a dozen at a time lets them stay really focused. We keep our paint master right next to them at all times as they're working on these. And, those come into the shop. They get they're cast first, then they get base coated, and then it's a ton of work from head to toe on that guy. From everything from dirtying up and glossing his fingernails to painting his tongue to coloring his beak to making sure the eyes are installed and getting his little tufts of hair on his cheeks and his ears and his top of his head and around his neck. There's a whole bunch of work that goes into them. They're all coming out really cool. So far, everybody that's gotten them has been so excited, and it's really, really nice to see them starting to go home. I want to say they're more than halfway through the run. So if you ordered anytime after the first 20 seconds of the first day, that's probably where you are in the edition size. And as soon as those are ready, Katie or Tracy or Ross or Christine will be emailing you. What's nice is, as they get each batch going, it's a bunch of days of work getting them made and finished, and then it's another few days of work just getting them all packed, because they're all going into custom styrofoam inserts. But these things aren't coming off some kind of big conveyor belt. There's no machine putting this stuff together. Everything you get is hand wrapped, hand packed. A lot of love and care goes into them. So we appreciate everybody's patience as we get them done. I'm very happy that those are on track with what we said. And if you go to for anything you're ordering, if you're ever curious about that, just go to the website. And usually in the bullet points or at the very bottom of the top page text will be an estimate of when they're shipping.
All right, speaking of large maquettes, Ian says, it's great to see the archive collection continuing to grow. I love the inclusion of signature editions with these releases. Super excited about the Gaffy Sticks next month. Just waiting for the Man Maquette announcement.
Oh, boy.
That's a big maquette.
That is a big one. Yeah, remember how we were saying there's a few that are bigger? Man's a big one. That costume is crazy.
Yeah, that piece is amazing.
We've been finding some old pictures of them working on this stuff. And some of the people who worked on the show have had some photos and things like that. Judy Elkins has some great photos. And to see that Man costume coming together was really cool. To see Effant Mon, that thing is massive.
It's crazy.
Like, that's a huge, huge, huge costume. Hermie Odell is another one, which I always loved Hermie Odell as a kid. I don't know. I think it was the Blue Border Return of the Jedi card, horrible creature, horrendous monster, whatever. And it's just like...
Maquette is grotesque.
It's terrible. it's awful.
So bad, it's good.
But I love it.
All right, Justin says, I know the focus is on Return of the Jedi at the moment, but since you have done the Gamorrean fighter, I'm wondering if other Mandalorian maquettes are possible. I think a Grogu maquette would be cool.
So do we. We think that too. There is a really good one. Christian Altsman did the art for it. Tony McVeigh did the three-dimensional sculpt for it. At this time, that's not something we're able to do, but we're going to keep looking at that, and it's certainly that would be a really, really cool one. And there are some other stuff from first season Mando, especially much rougher, more really, really loose concept-y stuff of some classic aliens that I think would be real neat, but we'll see how that goes as well.
All right. Someone's asking if we can ever do any Starship maquettes or models.
So right now, no. EFX currently has the rights to doing prop replica starships. It's an interesting question if you could say the Colin Cantwell models were actually conceptual models and therefore maquettes and then would fall under our license. But
That's an argument there.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that we're going to race to get into those weeds contractually.
Yeah.
But for right now, probably no starships from us.
All right. Brent says, love seeing the Max Rebo in the Light and Magic series.
That was neat, right?
Yeah.
And it's always cool seeing the vintage footage of, Phil just literally like holding this little guy up. Exactly what you're getting. Scanned right off it, and he's just like, holding it up, looking at something and trimming some foam, holding it up, trimming some foam. I always thought he was cutting fur. I thought it was covered in like dark blue or black fur, but it's black reticulated foam that they then covered in latex sheets and foam skins and stuff like that.
Aaron's got a good question. Any chance of Cy Snoodles or the rest of the band joining Max in the Maquette line?
I would love for that to
we would
happen.
definitely like
That would be a lot of fun.
All right, I think I'm caught up on questions. Maybe you can dive into Weequay.
Yeah, oh yeah, Weequay, right. Oh yeah, the reason we're here.
The main stuff.
You know what else too? So this was maybe before. No,
Yeah.
I'll do that. So yeah, this is our guy of the day, right? So this releases tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern. It is the big brother to Max Rebo, as you can see. Really, regardless of what plane they're on, it's much more substantial. It is one of the cool things about the Maquette line is that they're all unique sculpts. They're all slightly different scales. They're all by different hands. Even sometimes you'll have stuff that was done by the same sculptor, but in slightly different scales or styles or things like that. We looked at some of Dave Carson's stuff, and we're just like, how is it possible the same guy sculpted this and that? Like they're, the styles are so varied and cool. Weequay is one that caught our eye immediately when we went to the archives and looked at him. And not just because, just again, scale-wise, he's about $50 more than Max was. That 50 actually doesn't come so much from the size, but the level of detail that has to go in on him. With Max, there's a lot of paint. There's some very tricky casting and stuff like that. But with Weequay, you have the addition of the hair braids. You have each of these little sections here. You've got the hair coming down. You've got the sort of two-layer necklace that he's got going there. All stuff that adds a little bit of shop time and his paint is honestly a little bit more complicated than Max. It's a little more specific, I think, than Max. But it's a neat piece. And again, it is just interesting to me to see them side by side. It's like they work together. They go, but they don't match, as they say. And that's, I think, going to be the coolest thing about this line, the variety of what you're getting. You've got stuff that are busts. You've got stuff that are full bodies. You've got stuff that are almost 3/4. There are really, really tight dialed-in sculpts like Weequay to, then much looser stuff. There's things with fur. There's things with hair. But Weequay was, as we said before, sculpted by Mr. Ken Ralston. He was a visual effects artist on the early Star Wars films, starting on the first Star Wars. His first job on Return of the Jedi was he was assigned to the creature crew, though. And Ken's major sort of known contribution to Jedi were all the space battles and figuring out how do you combine 50 elements on a screen back in the day where you had to do all of this optically and practically. And where you had to shoot everything backwards, It's just bonkers that they kept track of this stuff. Ken says they were able to keep track of it because they're super geniuses. And I believe them. But the cool thing is, Ken actually sculpted a whole bunch of really cool creatures. Dude, should we tell some of the other ones that were on his list? Does that spoil anything?
No, I don't think
so, obviously, Weequay is a big one. What else did Ken do? Ken did Klaatu, which is very similar to Weequay in terms of rough scale, and it's a bust. He did the rock lobster. He did a long neck alien that wound up finding its way into episode 2. There's others, and now I've lost them.
We don't have our printed sheets, our cheat sheets.
Yeah. All right, next time we do one of these, we'll tell you some more. But Weequay himself is really neat. It's a super, super tight sculpt, very, very detailed, very polished, very finished. It definitely shows, no matter who these people were at these working on these shows, whether they were working in the model shop, whether they were shooting stuff with cameras and doing optical prints, these were all artists. And this is just proof of that in Ken's regard. Loosely based, or at least inspired by Queequeg from Moby Dick. And if you look up Weequay, he doesn't really look anything like this, but he sort of looks exactly like this. It's one of those things where Ken, absorbed and digested that inspiration and came up with something cool. And the whole idea was, this is a guy who's going to be on the skiff. And that was the sort of thinking he had. It was like, okay, this is a guy out in the sun, working the deck. What does that look like? What does that feel like? And so, very sort of Native American vibe to it, very sort of stoic and drawn and, certainly weathered by the sun, all of those tight wrinkles and everything like that. And it just immediately grabbed us as one of our favorites. And it's also really close to the final, which I think is another thing that makes it interesting. The ears are different on the final, though. On the final, his ears are more just the holes, so he's actually got a second set of ear holes or something way back here. On the final Weequay, that's kind of all you get, is like a little ear tube or something like that. Whereas on the Maquette, he actually had these kind of big Spock ears or demon ears or something. The braid carried through to the final. The necklace did not. He was not, going to the clubs in the 90s wearing his gold chains. The addition on this is all going to be solid resin for Weequay himself. It'll be a real wood base down on the bottom. The hair is all laid in by hand inside of these little pieces back here, which all get glued into place. Everything is hand painted, down to the different colors, 3 or 4 different colors just on those guys. Eyes, his little earring, ears, layers and layers of browns and pinks and warmth and darkness. It's probably not coming through great in terms of color in here. It never does. Go to our website and check out the pictures. If you go to regalrobot.com/Star Wars, just click on the characters and bust section and you'll find this fella right there. And once again, tomorrow this goes up for sale at 12 noon. And there is a signature edition of just 100 pieces. So if you're interested in that, you're going to want to get in early. There is a numbered edition of 250 pieces. Each one of those will also get a plaque, and those will all be hand numbered by the folks here before they get sent out. Every one of these is going to be hand painted by the team here, and everyone will be hand packed in I believe it's a gloss black box with what they call the tuxedo label from the Star Wars high-end collectibles group, and then a die-cut foam insert around him of white foam. And that might be all I have to say.
Yeah, we had a couple people asking about the size of them. Want to give them rough dimensions on it?
Yeah, hold on.
Trusty measuring.
So he is just about 7 inches tall and also just about 7 inches wide, and I believe, if I'm remembering right, 4 inches deep. The bases on these are all based on the ones that they're on at the Lucasfilm Archives. They're not necessarily the exact same height and things like that. And they are definitely a lot nicer, because most of what happened at the archives is, or when they were working on these, is they would just take a little chunk of plywood, a little chunk of 2x3, a little chunk of 2x4, and they would make their sculpts and put them on them. So something like Max Rebo would have been on a 2x3 or a 2x4, and I believe it was a 2x4, and the one edge would have been raw and things like that, painted but just raw. So what we've done is just basically take the top-down dimensions, and in the case of Max, we've actually matched the height, 1.5 inches. Same with Bib Fortuna and some of the others where they're on the taller base, and just made it a cleaner piece. In the case of Max, it's actually a resin piece because we're casting it when we've got balls in place and things like that. For Weequay and a lot of the others, it's going to be real wood. It's going to be the same type of wood and finish that you had on the chess pieces that came with these beautiful wood display bases. And when it comes to something like Weequay, the original is actually on a 3/4 inch piece of plywood. But to keep the line looking uniform, our thought is let's get the same basic dimensions, but let's put everything on the 1.5 inches. just gives it a little more solid feel to it, makes it a little more important. It's not as haphazard, and it makes these just a little more of like a showpiece. So that's what you're going to see on a lot of these. It's all going to be that same height in terms of the base, and then we'll make the other dimensions kind of match what's in the archives wherever possible.
Jason says, love all the details down to the chain.
Thank you.
Adam's got a good question. He goes, hey, Tom.
Hey, Adam.
No.
Great question. Thanks.
You have mentioned before the 3D scan process for these amazing pieces. Can you talk about that process?
No. Yeah, of course.
Secret.
It's it is magic. I mean, there's nothing short of it. The idea that I can remember being in the archives, holding the original Macs, and then be here looking at this in my hand, kind of makes my brain hurt. And every time we do our first test print off of a scan, Rob and I both are like, well, kids on Christmas, because it's just like, how cool, why is this here? This is amazing. So basically, it is a super, super, super high-res scanner down to a fraction of a millimeter in terms of how much resolution it can find. You do multiple passes of the piece from different angles to capture every bit of detail you can. Depending on the piece, some of them that is easier and harder than others. Sometimes it depends on the size of the piece too. But the basic process is the same. You take your piece, you go at it from multiple different angles with this scanner. It is something where it's almost like Tai Chi. You know, when you're doing it, you're just doing this like kind of very slow motion. Sometimes you're doing things where it's locked down and things go on a turntable, but almost always we go into hand mode to get the underneath and to get the stuff that you just can't get with the turntable mode. The more passes you do, the more detail you get, and then it's just down to us having really, really talented 3D artists who know how to process that scan and interpret it, and to go through and see, like, okay, there's a little extraneous information here. That's a scan booger. Let's get rid of that. And what is legitimate to the item and keep that. The most important part, I think, of the scan process is actually the rest of our process, which is going in and matching the colors on Pantone charts. It's measuring every part of these so that we have physical, empirical measurements to go back to in case there's ever any question about a scan. And it's photographing the hell out of them, if you'll pardon my language. That's fine. I've seen Andrew. You can say dirty words now. Yeah. It's photographing these things like crazy from every possible angle so that when you go in to look at that scan and you need to decide, is this an artifact of the scan or is this on the artifact in this case, you know what the answer is. And that's that digital side of it. From there, it's having extremely high-resolution printers that run in resin to make our mold masters and things like that. And then it is on to, getting talented people to do the paint on them. A lot of times there's sort of a lot of back and forth in the paint master process. I actually did the paint masters on Weequay, but I did them twice because I wasn't thrilled with the first time. When you're doing paint on something like this, it's not just about matching how it looks. It's about matching it in a repeatable process. And in a sense, if you get halfway through painting something and you're doing a paint master and something isn't right, you've got to strip it down and go all the way back to the beginning, because going over a mistake is going to look different than doing it right the first time. And so we're really, really cautious about that, and we want to make sure that when we go to paint the production run on these, that they match perfectly to the original Paint Master, which matches as closely as possible, as certainly in style, to the original artifact itself.
All right, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, Tom.
Uh-oh.
Why don't you talk a little bit about our exclusive coming up?
Oh.
You can give them a little something.
I don't know about that. I don't know if I can. You started this. All right, I will finish what you started. So we do have an exclusive coming up. We have a lot coming up. It's going to be busy the next little bit. Well, here's the cool thing, too. I think a lot of people think of us as, the high-end collectibles people. They see the signature edition Tuscan Raider, who's back here. They see the Maquettes, signature editions, numbered editions. They see things that are a few $100s, a few $1,000s, and maybe they think that's all we do. But we don't. We have lots of sub $100, sub $50, even sub $30 stuff, such as this cool little guy. So this we put out for the Obi-Wan series, and it actually came out a little bit after the Obi-Wan series because sometimes we don't always get the earliest look at stuff as licensees. But we do like to have some fun with this stuff. This is one of our magnets. These are in that $30 range. You can see they're decent size. They need a very strong magnet to hold themselves up because they're solid resin. And that's one that came out a couple of weeks ago. In the next few weeks, we have on October 6th, I'm looking at the board, you can't see it, on October 6th, we have New York City Comic Con coming up. Now, we're not going to be at the show, unfortunately. However, we are going to have, like we did last year, a New York Comic Con from home exclusive, just for the time of the show. So, that is going to be a magnet. That will be $29.99. Some of them will be made to order. We actually have about 200 of them made already. So if you're in the first 200 that order, and again, get in early, you will get yours shipped right away. After that, they'll probably be about 3 to 4 weeks, I think, is what we're planning. Honestly, it really depends how many get ordered at that point. But it's a really cool magnet. It is from a movie, Star Wars movie we haven't done anything from yet. And it's probably the coolest thing from that movie that we could do. Maybe. It depends who you are. And it's very propish. And I think that's all I really am comfortable saying about it.
I agree with that.
But I think, so that will be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, October 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th. Those are the only days you can order that. Last year, we did it with our Luke Skywalker Tauntaun magnet, and we sold hundreds of them in just a few days. This would be the same kind of thing. If you have any interest in this, don't sit on it, don't wait. If once you see us announce it, just be ready to order the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th of October. Those 4 days only, and that's all you can, this is the only time you can get it.
I will be teasing it soon.
Yes. Yeah, probably in the next few days, you'll start
yep.
seeing some teasers about that.
I'm caught up on questions right now. Maybe give another rundown on Weequay and how you get it, the numbers, signature edition.
Yeah, and you know what? I'll also just say we have another release coming on the 18th, and that will be 2 more wall plaques with some really, really early vintage art. Some of the earliest Star Wars art around. Very excited for that, and I think people are going to really like these ones. One of them will go great with the Empire, Darth Vader in Flames, and the Revenge of the Jedi, that dome top. And the other one is just really unique, great shape, something that will really pop and stand out on your wall. And the prices are great on them. Those are actually going to be lower than most of the other wood plaques we put out. So stay tuned for that as well. All right, last looks at Weequay. Do we want to talk Gaffy timing at all?
Yeah, I mean, we did have that question about the Gaffy saying he's excited about it, so sure.
So those are going to be coming very soon. Right now, it looks like the Gaffies will be about 1 month from today, more or less, to be released. We have the final okays from Lucasfilm and Disney in terms of the website postings and stuff like that to get through. But all of the back-end work on those are done. The prototypes are all done.
The bases are all done.
The bases are all done and look great. We're very excited about that. And so with all of that in mind, that's the goal on those. If you are one of the many, many people that keeps asking us, when are the Gaffies coming? About a month. And we'll firm that up in the next little bit, and as soon as we have that, we'll start announcing that a little more forcefully. With more force, as they say.
All right, a couple more questions, QnA. Steve has a statement. Weequay is absolutely gorgeous, so thank you, Steve. Jason says, will there be one version of the Gaffy or two? Is it being released? Is one being released the A New Hope version?
So there are two versions of the Gaffy stick. They are both being released at the same time. One of them is based on the basic Tuscan Raider Gaffy stick from The Mandalorian and Book of Boba. It's not Boba Fett's Gaffy, it's the actual Tuscan Raiders Gaffy. And we provided that for Season 2 of Mandalorian. So we were able to use our original molds to master that and give people something that is from our archive and not just the Skywalker Ranch archives, which is kind of nice. So that's that one. And then the A New Hope one is also being released at the same time, and that one will be a signature edition with Roger Christian, who built the props for the first Star Wars movie. And technically, Roger was supposed to be a set dresser on that movie, but he did everything. So that's a really cool one. We've got our plaque signed already. We've had a nice chat with Roger as well to put out a video, and I think you guys will enjoy that too. And that's about all we can share on those right now, I think.
Well, Scott's asking if we have a price point for the Gaffys yet.
It's on the board.
Yeah, we have
it's $11.99 for the Mandalorian version and $18.99 for the A New Hope Signature Edition. Both of those are, each have lineage to the originals. The Mandalorian is solid resin. Two parts, the spike end and the back end, they screw together. It is all resin from tip to tip and out of our original molds. The A New Hope is resin on the, quote, wood side of it, which is how the original prop is. It's actually casting, so the original prop is actually resin as well. And that's real metal on the other end of it for the A New Hope version. It's all welded, all stained and distressed by hand and everything like that. Heavy. And you have the signature edition for that. So they both have great lineage, stands, a lot of work goes into each one of them, and on the A New Hope you have the signature and the metal end as well.
Jason says, wow, fantastic that we're able to add Roger's signature to the Gaffys.
Thank you. Yeah, it was something we thought about early on, and sometimes we sit here and say, is adding an element like that going to push the price in a direction too far or something like that? But really, especially on an edition like that, where we're not going to do multiple different versions of it. When we're talking about a maquette, you can do two versions. You can have your kind of more special one and the standard one. You can have something that, can be on the website for a while, which is always a thing for us. Like, how do we design these editions so they don't sell out within minutes? I think it's cool when that happens. It's a lot of fun. But ultimately, we want to have a website of stuff people can buy. And I think that as people come in on the Maquette series, we're going to have folks that don't find us until, a few in on this series. And I'd hate for someone who's buying, the Maquette after Weequay or the Maquette after that to not be able to go back and get some of the others. But that's where the numbered edition comes in. And on the Gaffy sticks, we've just gone very simple, kind of like we did with the Tuscan Raider, kind of like we did with Salacious Crumb. All signature. I believe 150 pieces on the signature edition. Yes.
Yes, we have.
And I don't know if we settled on the Mando one yet. So we'll see how that goes. If you have a suggestion for how many pieces you think the Mandalorian edition of that should be, let us know. Throw it in the comments. We'll look later.
All right. Adam, who earlier asked about the 3D process, he goes, thanks for the great detailed answer, Tom and Regal. Would there ever be Cantina aliens or even barware based on the Cantina props?
That's pretty cool. So anybody who knows me knows I have a slight Cantina fetish. I personally would love to do some Cantina aliens. I think, in terms of maquettes, that would not be a thing because they didn't make maquettes for those. Unless we were to do something with the original artists and have them do their interpretation, that would be a little fun. But I think, in terms of one-to-one busts of some of the Cantina aliens, that's stuff we could do. Some of it is stuff we've done for Lucasfilm for commercials and things like that in the past. So we even have some artifacts and or assets, as they call them, to draw from. But we'll see. It is always on my mind to get some Cantina aliens out there. I would love to do that. In terms of barware, probably not. That's a different license. But I don't know. Maybe if you just say that it's a prop and non-functional and please don't drink out of this. Put a hole in the bottom so they can't drink out of it. You know?
Dribble club.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
I am caught up on questions.
Alrighty.
So again, I would just kind of get a rundown on Weequay again.
I think that's it. I think we're good. Tomorrow, Weequay, sculpted by the great multi-Oscar winning Ken Ralston, who is a lot of fun. Please check out the videos on our YouTube. If you haven't done it, go to YouTube, and Regal Robot is the channel. If you are watching this on YouTube right now, because we do re-air these there, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And if you are watching this on Facebook, please like our page, follow us, and keep up with all the fun stuff we're doing. We thank you all for all the encouragement and support of what we do. This fella comes out tomorrow. He is loaded with detail. He's got hair. He's got wires. He's got earrings and chains and a really cool paint job.
Multiple ears.
Yes. And you know, this is a character, this is a species and an alien that endures. You know, it shows up in Clone Wars, it shows up in Galaxy's Edge, it shows up in The Mandalorian and Book of Boba, and of course, Return of the Jedi. And this is where all of that started. This is the concept. This is the seed that, you know, became that tree of creature characterization. And personally, I am really, really enamored with this whole line, and I think the idea of going back to these original concepts for all of these cool aliens is just a really exciting thing.
Guy.
What's that?
Just not you, that guy.
But not you. Yeah. But I can't get enough of it. When we start putting these together, when we start putting them up around some of the other ones we've done, some of the other stuff that have come out of original molds like these two, or other scans like those, you really start to see the potential of this just as a group and how cool it's going to be once we start getting more and more of these out there. And I hope more and more of you will bring more and more of these into your homes. So thank you on that note. And again, if you're watching, thanks again. Like and subscribe. Please tell your friends about what we do. We are still a small shop. We still make everything by hand. All of the folks here in New York put a lot of heart into what we do, and we just appreciate you following along and sharing what we do. So thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.